r/AskReddit. Former neo-Nazis/members of hate groups, what was your "I need to get the hell out of here" moment? r/Reddit. My uncle was part of the KKK. He was very poor and homeless, and the KKK supplies you with housing and food and pays for things for you. But he tried quitting, and one day as he left a bar, he was jumped by members and had his chest slit open. He had to get around 200 staples, but he still quit. Thankfully. I'm sorry about your uncle, hope he's in a better place now. I didn't know that they paid for their members' housing and food. That's really interesting. Do you mind expanding on that a little? Not op but gangs, and, by extension, hate groups, which tend to function as gangs, often provide forms of social service to relevant communities. This is one of the ways they can gain new membership, and why some communities tend to idolize or sympathize with them. Moreover, it's a reason many gangs are founded in the first place. When you've got nobody else looking out for you, they're there to protect you, to provide for you, to give charity in a crisis, or to give safety in a war zone. The Bloods formed to protect people when the Crips were beating and killing folk. The Crips were formed like a club to help black kids in poverty who were banned from groups like the Boy Scouts because of their race, like a social club but also a sort of welfare network of its own. The Yakuza were some of the first responders to the tsunami, while the Mafia offered alternative economic growth and social status to disadvantaged Italians. Hell, in some places, the Mafia runs basic services like trash pickup. Organized crime and gangs in general are a sort of social net, so the KKK would be too by extension, I suppose. This is really helpful. Thank you for taking the time to write it out. If you're really interested in the environments that lead to gang formation and what they do to people's lives, as well as the chronic imprisonment and other things that are tied in, I would recommend reading Punished: Policing the Lives of Black and Latino Boys, by Victor M. Rios. Another really illustrating book to read is Gang Leader for a Day by Sudhir Venkatesh. He was a sociology grad student who befriended a local gang, did a ride-along, basically, and wrote about the whole experience and how the gang grew, recruited, supported the community, etc. I find it fascinating because it really challenges traditional standards of morality and the balance of doing good and doing harm. r/Reddit. I have an acquaintance who works to help reform Nazis in Germany. According to her, a lot of people leave the movement not because they've had a change of heart, but because their lives have been threatened by their fellow Nazi friends. And since a lot of them have alienated their families and have no one to turn to for support or community, they will often end up in these formal, government-sponsored reform programs. She said that even though a drastic political shift might not be the catalyst for a person to join the program works with individuals over long stretches of time and with the aim of slowly shifting their views through mandated therapy and such. She said she's definitely seen some success stories, but has also seen some people who never quite have that change of heart. Who would have thought that Nazis don't make for great friends? There was talk on Twitter recently regarding the Proud Boys specifically, but broadly, the lack of solidarity and empathy within alt-right circles. They hate everyone including each other. Were people on Twitter surprised or mocking them? Not really either, just sort of explicating it and contrasting with leftist solidarity. Like the left will do jail support, show up at court for each other, bring snacks to things, just do human things for each other, and neo-Nazis are just alone. No one comes to their court appearances, they usually turn on each other. Which honestly is not surprising, seeing how they're ideologically opposed to any type of societal support structures and take any sign of human weakness as inferiority. I gotcha. That makes me happy, as that will negatively affect the longevity of their group. r/Reddit. I started to get older and learn more compassion. I was a lonely kid and I didn't have many friends, and I already grew up in a racist household, and many of my family members are neo-Nazis, covered with white supremacy tattoos. I discovered a group of older skinhead kids and I fell into it pretty bad. As I was learning more compassion and slowly was shedding my neo-Nazi beliefs, my buddies were bragging that they beat the fuck out of another mutual friend of ours when he said he wasn't a Nazi anymore and he was dating a black chick. I was already thinking about leaving the group. It was basically a little gang. Once I found out they were beating up people for leaving, I realized it really was like a gang and I didn't want anything to do with it. I was shedding my racism and I didn't want to be involved. So I thought if I was a piece of shit enough to be a Nazi in the first place, I deserved to get beat up anyway, and if getting beat up meant I could get away for a life away from Nazism, then that was good enough for me. I've still been a neo-Nazi for longer than I've been an anti-Nazi, but I'm looking forward to the day I can say I've been an anti-Nazi for longer than I've been one. Damn. That was really heartfelt. I really wish you all the best, and I hope the beating wasn't too painful. Luckily I didn't get beat up. I guess I should have mentioned that. I'd if they actually beat up my friend. Maybe they were just trying to scare me. I just stopped talking to them. I ran into the ringleader a few years later. He married a Jewish girl and had a kid, which is funny because he had said when we were friends that if he ever had a crush on a damn dirty Jew we should shoot him in the head. Every single one of that group grew out of their hatred and put Nazism aside them. You really have put this whole comment in your OG one. Great story, wish you all the best, friend. r/Reddit. Not me, but my grandfather evidently was a member of either the Klan or associated hate group back in the 1960s. He became a born-again Christian and walked away from it. There was little evidence of his history as I grew up. I only found out after my mother told me about it after he passed away. If you take your religion completely seriously and not hypocritically, it makes sense he'd do that, starting with the golden rule. Yup. Coming from a Christian, it sucks that a majority of Christians in power, and many Christians who are normal people, alter the rules to benefit themselves and give the rest a bad name. Religion gives assholes so much leverage to amplify the effects of their shitty behavior. I've often said that the number one enemy of the church is the church itself. We're here to save you. From what? Ourselves. r/Reddit. Long ago, buddy of mine quit the Klan after just barely not getting his head taken off by a .44 mag. He and his fellas were in their trucks driving along, and saw a truck driving through what they thought of as their town. Said truck had a black guy driving, and another in the passenger seat. Being the kind of fellas they were, they took exception to this and gave chase, hooting, hollering, threatening to run the truck off the road, etc. As my friend was leaning out his window to yell some nonsense, the passenger in the truck they were chasing opted to instill a sense of caution in the good old boy's vile regard. My friend saw the pistol come out, had that moment of dread, saw the muzzle drop ever so slightly, and the side mirror on his truck vanished. He realized how close he'd come to death for what suddenly seemed like a very silly reason. Within a few months he was quietly packing up and leaving town, cutting pretty much all his social ties permanently. But did he learn to accept and not hate? 'Cause quitting the Klan after a near-death doesn't exactly mean he's not racist anymore. Sorry if this came off aggressive. Once he got away from the echo chamber he changed quite a bit. A lot of what he thought he knew got challenged on a daily basis, so he had to grow and unlearn what he knew. Glad to hear a brother reformed. They don't usually let brothers into the Klan. r/Reddit. My dad was a KKK member and I became a neo-Nazi skinhead at the age of 14, because it was acceptable rebellion. I could be a teenager but not risk getting kicked or upsetting my parents too bad. At 18, I married a former Klansman who also had ties to a neo-Nazi group I was in. We bounced between various groups for about a decade after the main neo-Nazi group split, including a year or two where we were both on the state board of the local KKK. There were times I thought about leaving and was having second thoughts, in part because of hypocrisy and how most racists we knew lived and behaved worse than they stereotyped other races as doing, and in part because of growing misogyny in the larger racist movement, but I was worried about losing all my friends and my family if I did. Being an open racist isn't really constructive to making or keeping friends who are not also racist. The final straw was twofold. I was pregnant and didn't want to raise my son that way because overall it made our lives worse, plus I connected with a few people in online pregnancy groups without knowing their race and found that one woman I related to the most was black and married to a white man. My husband had also come out as bisexual and, during my pregnancy, had told me he was possibly transgender. He had dating profiles online stating this and I was worried some of our friends would literally kill him if they found out. Very few female stories here, thanks for sharing. r/Reddit. My niece in Romania married a neo-Nazi last year, or at least we thought he was because of his long Facebook history, racist tattoos, prior arrest for hooliganism, etc. I had a 4-hour car ride with him and had a long chat. He quit because he left the Romania for a little while to work in Amsterdam. His co-workers were from all over the world, including African countries and Israel. He realized everyone was pretty much the same after drinking with them and smoking a joint after work. There was nothing about them worth hating, they were doing the same thing he was. He basically quit Facebook and started getting his tats modified, and hasn't touched politics at all since 3 or 4 years. This is basically what changed my opinion about gay guys. I'm from East Europe too, we don't have gays here and it's all a huge taboo topic. Went to the UK, had several friends and classmates who were openly gay, realized that they're normal people just like anyone else, and now I'm kind of ashamed. Same here. I'm from a culture that is quite religious and not accepting of gay people. In fact, I'd never met anyone of my ethnic group who was openly gay. I still don't, it's really that bad. Growing up in the UK and meeting all sorts of different people helped me get rid of the bigoted thoughts I had growing up. Sadly, we still got numerous bigoted assholes in our community, but I hope that changes as new generations grow up. That's the key, I believe. The young people and their broader view of life. Like you, I grew up anti-gay. It was my children who showed me the light, that other people's sex lives should not matter to me, that we should love all people the same. The millennials are making our world better. I'm so grateful. Did you just say something nice about millennials? I was in a chair, now I'm on my ass on the floor with no idea what just happened. But seriously, that's lovely. No one ever says anything nice about millennials. It says a lot of you that you've been open to inner growth of this sort, too. r/Reddit. This is long but I'm putting it out there. This was 30 years ago. I've probably only told this story 3 times in those years. It wasn't organized into anything identifiable as a group. It was more a large number of like-minded individuals living in the same North Alabama area. We all hated blacks. Weekend nights were spent at a few local bars surrounded by people talking about how some men had done something stupid or how they'd run a N off the road. You get wrapped up in the echo chamber, it's all you hear. The little things that happen between races start to seem like major trends. I went from being a guy who went to one of those bars as a joke, to making friends with people there, to having them, and that attitude become part of my life. I lived that life, I was that guy. You want to fit in, so you find your own stories to share. You start subconsciously seeking out anything that supports the racial stereotypes that fit the narrative of the group. You find huge fault with the minor things that make us different. Those people accepted me, they were my support group, my pseudo-family. Almost my entire social circle was made of people who hated every other race. We had some amazing times together. Huge loving Christmas gatherings, vacations, hunting trips. It's not like everything we did was centered around racism, it was just an underlying theme that would come out every now and then. I celebrated at weddings, cried at funerals, and danced when babies were born. I was in church with these people on Sundays, I helped build 2 Habitat for Humanity houses with people from that group, and we even raised money to help a local black family that had lost everything in a house fire. I think every group, everywhere, has a unifying thing that ties them together. This large group of people just happened to feel superior to black people. They didn't actively go out and do violent, evil things. They didn't all fly Confederate flags and spew hate. Most of them worked peacefully with black folks. Most of them were willing to help out black folks who had met with something bad. They just all felt that their skin color inherently made them superior. Then there was one night that changed everything for me. There were a couple of dozen people hanging out around a bonfire behind a bar, and I was listening to this guy I really didn't like go on a drunken rant about how white people and black people were different. He'd scream they all sell drugs. And I'd think, well, so do you? Dumbass. They are all on welfare. He was living on disability scam checks. They are all a bunch of thieves. Coming from someone who have been to jail several times for stealing materials from construction sites. I quite literally sat on a log around that fire and had a moment of enlightenment. His rant was almost like a voiceover where everything he said, or everything someone jokingly added, immediately made me look at who in that group was guilty of exactly what they were shading someone else with. I looked at these friends, these people I'd shared 100 meals and 1,000 beers with, and saw them all completely differently. There was nobody there I actually wanted to be around anymore. 10 minutes earlier I'd seen them as practically family. I can't really describe it, it was like they all changed. Physically changed. The longer I looked at them the more they morphed. They were no longer those good old heart of the country people I'd loved, they were all ignorant. Their entire body of knowledge was little more than passed down excuses and cliches. None of them were actually contributing anything to society. They weren't making the world a better place. They were doing nothing except figuring out how to keep someone under them so they didn't have to be the bottom of society. They were exactly what they said every other race was. I was physically sick when the girl I'd been dating came over. I looked at her and instead of the cute chubby little country girl I'd shown up with, she was just the spawn of generations of stupidity. She was as sweet as she could be, she treated me like her hero, and her family loved me. All I could see when I looked at her was every throwaway bigoted comment she'd ever made, every time she rolled her eyes at a black cashier, every snarky comment at the Chinese buffet. She had never done a thing wrong to me, and I've never felt a need to get away from someone so fast in my life. It was like I knew she was an anchor, and if I stayed with her I'd forever be one of these people. I'll never have the words to explain what those people looked like when I was leaving. They had all changed. I left that night and never looked back. I talked to the girl one time because she tracked me down at work and I promised I was okay. My head was just all messed up, and I needed a little time alone. I called my mom, told her I needed to move home, 90 miles away, and by Friday I had ghosted that entire place and everyone in it. Thank you for sharing your story. From what I can gather, most breaks from negative group thinking include similar moments of epiphany that create a distinct and jarring before and after effect from which there is no return. I'm sure it was difficult, but I'm glad you had such a moment, and are willing to talk about it. I think in philosophical terms this is considered a crossroads, and I like to think Op took the high road. More of a moment of clarity. r/Reddit. I met a gay man. A real, live man infected with the gay. I was raised in a very homophobic home in a rural area, and I always believed gays were bad people. I thought they were rude, self-centered, and bullies. I distanced myself from them until one day I was assigned to work with a flamboyantly gay man. I was horrified. He proved to be one of the nicest, most caring people I had ever met. He was a fantastic listener and good with melding ideas together. That interaction completely changes my outlook on LGBTQ+ people, much to the horror of my conservative family. They are quite uncomfortable that one of my best friends is a pansexual that uses they/them pronouns. I don't know why I didn't think people were decent humans just because of who they are attracted to, but opening my eyes allowed me to meet so many amazing people. Your opening sentence made me giggle a bit. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.